Presenting Benny Goodman and his music.
Good evening, everybody. Hey, Chris. Evening, Laura. Hey, Martin and Paula. Should be streaming live to Twitter right now. I don't know how that works, but it says I am. Hey, Timothy, Eric, Carolyn, Mona. Hey, Rodney and Kristen, Amy, Darlene, Leah. Hey, Larry.
Benny Goodman, ladies and
Oh,
gentlemen.
geez, I gotta update the title here.
Clarinet and the even more torrid band who pervades assorted rhythms, all danceable.
I knew I was forgetting something, and it's to update the title.
And first of all, one of Irving Berlin's greatest hits, Blue Skies.
Yep. Sorry about that. Hey, Liz, over on YouTube. Hey, Cindy. Hey, Ann. Hey, Diane. Hey, Dad. Hey, look who's come to see us. Here's the man himself. I think he's finally all done being mad that we've been feeding a neighbor's cat. Well, for a moment anyway. Hey, Alicia. Hey, Jean. Hey, Lori over on YouTube. Hey, Jordana. Susan, Gregory, Diane. Hey, Casey. Hey, Mom. Hey, Betsy. Am I still frozen for everybody? Might have frozen like a second. I guess I can't be that frozen. We got Miles. People notice Miles. Hey, Chuck. Hey, Jerry. Hey, Lauren. Oh, Miles is a purring cat right now. Hey, Karen and Tracy, Nancy. Evening all around. Brand new tour tonight. Hey, June, that should have been updated. It should say Hyde Park Tales now. You can even try having an animated background. Hey, Dina. Thanks, Kathy. Hey, Debbie. Hey, Karen. Yeah, Silent Film was the Sunday edition. Hey, Katie. You guys might be able to hear Miles purring right now. He's sitting right next to the computer. Miles. Hey, Michelle. If you hit refresh on whatever you're looking at, it should now say Hyde Park. Hey, Ed in Warren, Michigan. Trying to fix all the things that say Hyde Park Tales.
Benny Goodman presents Helen Ward singing With All My Heart.
Hey, all right, I got a person watching. Hey, they're on Twitter. Very weird. It's also using my, like, Simpsons Halloween name in the thing here. Hey, MJ. Hey, Phoenix. Hey, Ann. Hey, Meg. Evening shares. Hey, Timothy. Darlene. Teresa over on Twitch. Alright, I might have to say silent film for a while. It might not be anything I can do about that. Oh, thanks, Matt. That was awesome this morning. Yeah, I can't believe they actually let me in. Oh, Laura, it's on Twitter Live. I don't know how that works, really. All right. Michelle, congratulations. I'm big. Hey, Kristen, I can do that. I can switch this thing over. They're still ready to go. We'll talk about the World's Fair a little bit and its influence on later silent film industries. Evening, Steve. Hey, Kirk. Hey, Christy. Hey, Carol. Hey, everybody. Erev Tov, Lisa. Hot visitor. There you go, Miles. Just settle down and relax. And we'll play later, okay? I don't know where you guys have taken the jumping from. Hey, Pamela. Yeah, silent film was on Sunday. I don't know why it hasn't updated the titles there. Just one of those things. Hey, Grandma Bell. Hey, Aaron.
Benny Goodman goes way back and gets a lot of rhythm out of Walk, Jenny, Walk.
Hey, Karen. Hey, Ann. Yeah, I probably should have just restarted the stream after I realized the titles were wrong. But, well, you know. Here. We'll see if I can put up some text. There we go. Hey, Napur. Hey, Carol. And Karen. Evening, everybody. See if anybody from TikTok shows up today. We'll give it a minute or so. Well, this is a brand new one, this Hyde Park job. I'm really quite pleased with that one. A brand new presentation tonight. And just like me, I spent all day working on it and put it up under the wrong title. Kristen, you want tails? There you go. Hyde Park tails. Granted, it's only one tail. Priya's a little less apt to go with that. I'm trying not to do too much speed talking on TikTok. I know it's kind of the thing over there. Hey, Jenny. Hey, Tony and Jean. Hey, Ashley. Miles. Just relax, okay? Miles. We're going to let Benny Goodman do one more tune. Okay, you just relax up here, Miles, okay? Hey, Don. Miles is unsweatered today. Hey, Karen. We'll let Benny Goodman finish up this tune and get started. Any tales about a Dr. Jekyll tonight? Not tonight. I should find a Dr. Jekyll. Gina, yes it is. In fact, that reminds me. Yeah, it looks like the map did not yet upload. Oh no. Let's see how fast I can get this thing up here. Can I get this thing up before Benny Goodman finishes here? I think I might be able to. I might just be able to pull this off. Well, don't let anybody fall asleep in the hot tub, Mother. Hey, Cindy. Hey, Laura. All right. I am set. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Benny Goodman coming to you live from the Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago in the Joseph Urban Room, which nobody seems to be able to identify anymore. Coming to you live, assuming that it's still January of 1936. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I think it is time we go ahead and get started. Welcome along, everybody. Welcome to Mysterious Chicago. Despite what the typo on the title says, this is Hyde Park Tales, not Silent Film in Chicago. That was on Sunday. So, welcome along. I'm Adam Seltzer from Mysterious Chicago Tours. I've been a tour guide and historian here in Chicago for going on 20 years now. I've got about a dozen Chicago history books out. I'm on the History Channel and the Travel Channel all the time, so I am incredibly famous. So definitely you should pay attention to whatever I say, even though somebody on TikTok says that I'm actually working for Big Pharma and the PC crowd. That's correct. The Phil Collins crowd are the ones paying me to go through all this paperwork in cemeteries. All right, so among my books are Mysterious Chicago, the book, H.H. Holmes, The True History of the White City Devil, Murder Maps USA, brand new from Thames and Hudson, and coming this summer, Graceland Cemetery, Chicago's Stories, Symbols, and Secrets. That is out in August through University of Illinois Press. So welcome along, everybody. Today we are going to be doing a brand new one called Tales from Chicago's Hyde Park. Now Hyde Park is a neighborhood down on the south side of Chicago. I'll show you a bit of a map here. You start at the Loop, move down to here. I'll play that one more time. Here's the Loop. You can see the Sears Tower. If we go about 50 blocks south, or thereabouts, and a little over to the east by the water, Hyde Park is the neighborhood around the University of Chicago and around Jackson Park and Washington Park, down on the south side, starting at approximately 47th Street, depending on who you ask. It's one of those things. There's also the neighborhood of Kenwood is kind of absorbed into it. There's quite a number of neighborhoods around the general vicinity, so which neighborhood you're in at a given time kind of depends on who you ask occasionally. It's like that all over the city, of course. So today we're going to be talking primarily about Hyde Park and probably a little bit of Kenwood while we're at it. And I guess we can start at the beginning, way back down in Hyde Park itself. Now, this is Hyde Park down on 55th Street on the shore of the lake. Now, Hyde Park, the land for this was made into a park by a guy by the name of Paul Cornell, the father of Hyde Park. created this land bought this land, created the park in 1856, named it after the Hyde Park that is in London where people give speeches, and donated it to the city of Chicago. He also donated some land to the railroads because he figured if he let them build a station here, this new land he had bought might become a commuter suburb. And it was a suburb for quite a long time, up until about the late 1880s when Chicago started absorbing all of the suburbs and they turned into neighborhoods. He built for himself the Hyde Park Hotel, which was a well-known place up until about the 1910s. People like Mary Todd Lincoln stayed there right after Abraham was assassinated. Prince Albert of England stayed there for a little while as well. Then eventually, on this space was a place initially called the Sison Hotel, currently in the Hampton House, which is apartments, it's not a hotel anymore. But this was a place that hosted people like Duke Ellington at one point. I could do a whole tour. I keep teasing I'm going to do a whole tour of places in Chicago where Duke Ellington played. Now, also, this was the site of one of Chicago's best known at the times, but now most thoroughly forgotten murders. It was back in 1934. There was an advertising executive who lived at this place by the name of Eli Dacus. Now, Eli Dacus one day stepped out of his apartment here, stepped into a limousine, drove about half a block about down to the corner on the left side of where your screen is right now, when somebody else pulled up alongside of him, jumped out of the car holding a double-barrel shotgun. Eli recognized the guy and immediately shouted, "Oh my God!" But before he could say much more, the guy had put the double-barrel gun into the window of the limousine and shot him to death. This led to a lot of different theories. They couldn't imagine who might have actually done this. Now, he and his wife lived fairly separate lives. She was on a cruise over in the Mediterranean at the time. He was living with a woman here who was his nurse. That struck a lot of people as suspicious. This is a healthy young man. Why would he need an attractive young nurse living with him? But that theory kind of fell apart a little while after a while. But the driver did say, "Oh no, Lucille isn't his girlfriend. He's got this other woman who's his girlfriend." But then they found out that his wife only stood to make about $20,000 off of the insurance money out of the $350,000 in the fund. Turned out that most of it was going back to his advertising agency. And eventually they traced it back to a couple of people at the ad agency were probably the ones who had arranged the hit so that the company could get all the money. But they never quite went to trial because they both got bumped off before it could really go to trial. Eventually the Herald Examiner got really into the case and went through every possible theory. Could it have been gambling debts? Could it have been gangland connections? Could it have really just been the insurance the whole time? It was one of those things everybody had a theory about. In 1946, an Ohio paper said, if things start to get dull in Chicago, just bring up the murder of Eli Dacus. Everybody's got a theory and they can't wait to tell you about it. As of 1946 anyway, now it's almost totally forgotten today. We're going to start right around this general vicinity in Hyde Park, right around the lakeshore in the vicinity of 55th Street. We'll go back to some of the early part of it here, too. Another block down, 55th, and the lake. This is an area that at one time looked about like, well, currently it looks like this. 120 years ago, it looked more like this. Just a rocky and sandy lakeshore. Now, in 1901, there was a house here that was said to be one of the most haunted houses in Chicago. A man named Shaky Morgan had died inside of the place a while back, and the family was said to be able to hear his voice on the wailing hawk winds that blew in from the lake. The voice of it was so clear that they eventually were driven from the house and moved out altogether, but even all around the neighborhood, people said for years that you could still hear the ghost of Shaky Morgan. And it would be a horrible shame if you couldn't, just because can you think of a better name for a ghost than Shaky Morgan? I'm not really sure I can myself. Now, it took me a while to figure out who Shaky Morgan was anyway. It turned out Shaky Morgan was apparently a nickname for a guy by the name of James Morgan, who was a real estate developer. He helped turn what was just kind of rocks and swamp into an actual beach with piers right around here. Eventually sold the land for a hotel developer around the time of the World's Fair of 1893, made himself an absolute fortune, then died a few years later. There are a couple of references to Shaky Morgan. There's one of him like going to something at Camp Douglas or a battle or an armory of some sort, but not too much. I had to figure out. The 1901 article about being haunted mentioned the name of the family that had moved in. I was able to trace that back to the house. Yeah, it was definitely James Morgan. He has actually shown up on my Graceland Cemetery tours. Not so much for himself, but his brother Francis, Captain Francis Morgan. I can't get over talking about that guy because, hey, it's Captain Morgan. Not that Captain Morgan. But, we'll put this on with all of the audio, too, one more time with the video. See if you can hear the voice of Shaky Morgan in the wind. You hear anything? Probably just me humming. All right, from here we will take a walk straight down the road from where you can see right here, like straight down this way. Check out another woman who has definitely been at the on the Graceland tours, even though her grave is not marked by her own request. Fake dog in the window. I love the rounded sides on these places. There is a ton of cool architecture in Hyde Park. I couldn't include anywhere close to all of it. Just going through, I was looking up, there's places by Van Odstel, there's a lot of stuff by Alfred Alschuler, there's a lot of stuff by Henry Ives Cobb, there's some Howard Vandoren Shaw, lots and lots of great architecture down here in Hyde Park, mostly just on residential buildings. I didn't have time to include all of it, but we may be able to extend this one a little bit more. So, all right, everybody, this was the home for many, many years of a woman by the name of Mary Hastings Bradley, who first rose to fame as a jungle explorer. She wrote a number of travel books, the point of which was trying to encourage more women to go and explore in Africa. She was very well known in her day. She wrote she wrote travel books first. That's how she first really rose to fame, but really made her money writing mystery novels such as The 40th Door, which was made into a movie a couple of times. She maintained a busy society schedule, but people would ask her, so what are you going to do next? And she said, people always want to know, what jungle am I going to next? I don't really stop to think about these things. I don't plan ahead. I just go where the world takes me. Spent years and years on safari in Africa. Later on, she was hired by the United States government after World War II to go over to Europe and document things that she found in the concentration camps and the death camps. Her actual report of it is not public, but she did make speeches afterwards saying that she had seen plans for missiles in Germany that if they had been built would have been able to get across the Atlantic in 90 minutes. I'm kind of skeptical that that's actually possible, but she believed that if D-Day had come just a couple of weeks later, it would have been too late. Incidentally, also, her daughter became a major science fiction author under the name of James Tiptree Jr. And of course, we're around the University of Chicago around here. A lot of the people we're talking about tonight are affiliated with the University of Chicago, which started being built right around the same time the World's Fair of 1893 was being built nearby. They called the World's Fair the White City. This was the Gray City. All made of stone and largely designed by a guy named Henry Ives Cobb. You see quite a lot of Henry Ives Cobb stuff around the city, like the old Excalibur Club, that's the old Historical Society, the Glessner Mansion down on Prairie Avenue. He comes up on quite a few of our tours. They used to joke that the University of Chicago was the place where Baptists pay Jews to teach Catholicism to atheists. But one of the professors there that we'll cover first is just up the road from campus. You can see the castellated buildings of the campus here. Just up the road is a house by the architect Howard Vandoren Shaw. We've talked about him quite a bit. He designed the first modern shopping center up in Lake Forest and a number of houses around the city. His daughter was a sculptor to the spirit of electricity that you can see on Dearborn. But this was a house that he built for James H. Breasted, who was the first American to get a doctorate in Egyptology back in the 1890s. After he got his doctorate, he came here to Chicago to teach, and in addition to teaching, also did a lot of things like deciphering hieroglyphics. Early on in his career, he published a huge volume that translated every extant hieroglyph that had been discovered to date. There are some of them that have never been retranslated even to this day. By the 1920s, he was working with people like Howard Carter, the guy who eventually discovered King Tut's tomb. This is him over on the left here. And the guy leaning in on the right, making sure that he's in the picture, is Howard Carter. They are in the tomb of Ramses XI right here. And in fact, Breasted was even present when King Tut's sarcophagus was opened. They had brought him into the tomb so he could do readings of the hieroglyphics and translate all of the manuscripts that they found there, which were said to be quite a lot. But very shortly afterwards, it started to be reported, entirely erroneously, that above the door of the tomb had been something about a curse on anybody who disturbs the body of the boy king Tutankhamun. Now, this was absolute nonsense, but about 6 weeks after the fact, one of the big financiers died, and then other people from the expedition started to die, and there immediately started to be stories about King Tut's curse. This is a quote from Charles Breasted, James's son, saying that it was all tush and piffle. He noted that lots and lots of these tombs had been grave robbed over the years without any supernatural effects. But 10 years after the fact, when James Breasted himself died, people once again started thinking, could it have been the curse of King Tut? He was on a cruise liner at the time. It was said to have been taken with malaria, but later it turned out that it wasn't malaria, it was some other illness. There were definitely those who thought that it might have been King Tut's curse, and in fact, the main reason they performed an autopsy was just so they could quiet people down with all of the curse talk. Now, it's hard for me to read about James H. Breasted, the University of Chicago professor, and not think about another University of Chicago professor, Indiana Jones, whose career at the University of Chicago probably would have overlapped with Dr. Breasted a little bit. Dr. Jones famously said, "Archaeology is the search for fact. We do not follow maps to buried treasure, and X never ever marks the spot. 70% of all archaeology is done in the library. Research, reading. We cannot afford to take mythology at face value." I used to quote that verbatim on ghost tours, only instead of archaeology, I said ghost hunting. Pretty much the same difference. So 1935 was the year that he died. That was also the year that our next subject got her first real painting job. This is South Dorchester Street near the campus. One of these was Saul Bellows' house, but I haven't checked out which one yet. Saul Bellow, the author. But I was really filming down here to talk about probably the least interesting looking house on the block. But this one on the left here at 5728 South Dorchester was the home of an artist named Gertrude Abercrombie, who has recently been described as the Jazz Witch of Chicago. Now, she was raised by itinerant opera employees who traveled around Europe with opera companies, eventually settled in Chicago, studied at the Art Institute for a while, studied at the University of Illinois, really just kind of did drawings on the side, but in 1935 she got a job with the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, that was employing a lot of artists, and decided, hey, I guess that means I'm an artist now. And ended up doing lots and lots of paintings that have just kind of recently been rediscovered. She was well known around Chicago at the time, but her paintings were, for lack of a better word, surrealist. She called them bop paintings. And her friend Dizzy Gillespie said that she did for paint what bop music did for music. Now, this is one of them called Strange Shadows. I love this. It's got this woman in her shadow, but a shadow of no tree, and she's holding out her arm, but there's no owl. Then the pillar you see... there's just so much to look at in here. It kind of reminds me of Remedios Varos mixed with Giorgio de Chirico. But she was okay with being just called a surrealist as well. Another of hers, Hand in Tent. One called A Search for Rest. Now, she lived in this house down in Hyde Park for years and years, and it was also a well-established tradition for jazz bands coming through town to go hang out at Gertrude Abercrombie's place. For one thing, she would give them a better place to stay than a lot of black musicians could get in hotels in Chicago at the time, and became pretty friendly with quite a few of them. The Modern Jazz Quartet lived here off and on for a couple of years. Charlie Parker was there for a while. She said that he was very, very difficult to be around, but his music was so great that they let him get away with it. This is her with Dizzy Gillespie, with whom she was especially close. And in fact, here is Dizzy with her at an art show. Now, she was a regular fixture at like the Hyde Park Art Fair and other street art fests for years up until her death in 1977. And this would just be one of those fairs where you buy paintings off of the street from people. At the time, I don't know what she was charging. I doubt it was very much, but within just a few years ago, people were still finding her paintings in like resale shops around Andersonville. But now they've started selling at auction. There was another big retrospective of her work just a couple of years ago, and now her paintings are selling for $10, $50, close to $100,000. She's just kind of been rediscovered. There's a terrific interview with her that Studs Terkel did right before her death, where she said, really, I just take real life and add a bit of mystery. And it's not that hard because everything's a mystery anyway. The whole world is mysterious. Kind of echoes to Kiriko's comment about how you should think of the entire world as a museum of strange things. Died in 1977. Shortly thereafter, there was a big retrospective of her works, and then she just kind of faded into obscurity again until just recently when she's come back. Character for days. Now, just around the corner from her house, on the campus, still on the campus, I'm going to spin here a little bit, so hold on to your lunches. And again, those of you just joining us, this should say Hyde Park Tales, not Silent Film down below. So this, of course, is probably the most famous architectural landmark down in Hyde Park, the Robbie House. The Franklin Robbie House, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, which frequently tops lists of like the most influential buildings of the United States in the 20th century. Almost the perfect example of the Prairie School of Architecture, one of Frank Lloyd Wright's most famous things. But for my money, a few blocks north of here is one that I think is actually a cooler house of his. This is one he built for the Austrian businessman Isidor Heller. And from just the front, it would look almost, if you're not being careful, it kind of looks like any other Hyde Park house, really. You know, certainly that emphasis on the horizontal certainly makes you think of the Prairie School. But if you see it from the side, now it starts to look a little bit more like a Frank Lloyd Wright. And this was Frank Lloyd Wright in 1896, fairly early in his career, when he was still a little bit more influenced by Louis Sullivan. And in particular, you can see up at the top row there, we'll move in a little bit, you can see this row of friezes. We can move in a little bit closer there still. It goes all around the edge of it. It's beautiful nymphs of the forest statues. And again, on the side, you can look up there, it goes all around the top panel. And these friezes particularly were actually not made by Wright himself, of course. They were designed by Richard Bach, the sculptor, who also comes up on the Graceland Cemetery tours. He was the guy who designed the columbarium for Lucius Fisher. Right underneath me right now. I wasn't specifically filming him with this clip. But this one, where that's actually a door, the keyhole is underneath the figure's sleeve. I think I did in fact zoom in to show that here, yeah. Showed it on TikTok the other day too. So the building is kind of a collaboration between Frank Lloyd Wright and Richard Bach, who also worked off and on with Marion Mahoney Griffin, who worked in Frank Lloyd Wright's office, and quite possibly would have been responsible for a drawing like this one. This is very much her style. That's just some of the architecture. A brief respite. We'll move up to 57th Street here, 6 blocks north of there. No, east and south. This is an apartment building called the Pepperland. I love this place. It's right outside of the metro station, painted up in beautiful colors. Named in the 1990s, when it was about 100 years old, they put the name Pepperland on it. That's the name from, that's the name of the land of the Blue Meanies attack in Yellow Submarine. Now, at the time in the 1990s, this place was famous for being the home of the University of Chicago Ultimate Frisbee team. It was known as the Party Flats. The Frisbee parties were kind of legendary. And the place was completely falling apart by the time a developer bought it in 2007. But now they're still kind of advertising it as a social place. It's a great place for parties. But it's been fixed up considerably now. And if we go down the block from there, down this street, we come to Rosalie Village. You might remember this from a morning mini tour about a week ago. Now, this is a planned development that started in the 1880s. The land was bought up and developed by Rosalie Buckingham, who later married Harry Selfridge, became Mrs. Selfridge of the department store fame. But when she was just a young heiress at the age of 23, she developed this entire village known as the Rosalie Villas. Most of the architecture was done by Solon Beeman, the same guy who did most of the buildings around Pullman. And it's just one fantastic building after another in this place. Now, most of them are by Solon Beeman, but there is also this blue one by W.W. Boyington. That's the guy who did the Rose Hill Cemetery gates, the water tower downtown, the governor's mansion in Iowa. There's just one great building after another in this space. One great house after another. It's one of my favorite little micro neighborhoods around Chicago. And at the time that it was built, the railroad tracks hadn't been raised up to grade level like they are now. So people here had boats. They had very easy access to the lake, and there were stories that people would just drag their boats from their backyards straight into the lake. It's such a great street. I'm glad that it's held up as well as it has. A lot of these most Victorian houses when they were first built would have looked about like this. But throughout the 20th century, most of them got painted white or gray. We're looking for a good Mysterian clubhouse. One of my favorite micro neighborhoods. Now let's go a little bit closer to the lake. Down here at the edge of Jackson Park, not much to look at now, just a very basic park, but this was the site of the beginning and end point of the first professional automobile race in the country, which took place in November of 1895, sponsored by the newspaper the Chicago Times-Herald. Several cars set off from this point on a race to Evanston and back, and enough of a winding route that it was going to be about a 55-mile total track. Most of the cars didn't make it the whole way. This was 1895. There weren't really mass-produced cars at the time. People just kind of had to invent their own. Most of them didn't make it. One of the judges got fed up and left partway through. The winner, the Duryea motorcycle, made that 55-mile trek in 10 hours and 17 minutes. Now, it wasn't moving the entire time. It went into a ditch a couple of times. It got stuck in the mud once or twice. As the Times-Herald itself put it, no records were broken, but various parts of the mechanism were. And of course, this is part of Midway Plaisance, where the World's Fair Midway was in 1893. That's a whole other tour in and of itself. But here on the edge of the University of Chicago campus, it's now just a long park, Midway Plaisance Park. And right where the skating rink is now was the site of the real highlight of the World's Fair by a lot of metrics, the Ferris Wheel. Now, Paris had just had their exposition with the Eiffel Tower. We had to do something to top that. Mr. Eiffel offered to build another even taller tower, but we wanted something new, something really American. So George Ferris designed this giant wheel. Now, this was 264 feet in diameter. Also, each of the cars was about the size of a modern school bus. But let's just put that in perspective for a second. 264 feet, that's about 25 stories. This is at a time when nobody had seen a building higher than 10 stories before, so this was a Ferris wheel that went twice as high in the sky as any building anybody had ever seen to date. And a lot of these people were coming in from small towns to the World's Fair who had never seen a building higher than 2 or 3 stories before, had never been higher off the ground than they were when they climbed up a haystack one time. So you can imagine, what a bunch of guts it must have taken to ride on this thing. But it was a huge hit at the time. It was such a hit, in fact, that they tried to rebuild it on the north side for a while, but without a World's Fair crowd, it wasn't really enough to keep it operating. So it eventually went to St. Louis for their World's Fair about a decade later, and in May of 1906, unable to do anything else, St. Louis finally just tore it down. Now, one legend I've heard is that the spindle is now lost. It was about the largest single piece of steel ever forged at the time, and now no one knows where it is. So it could be somebody's going to be digging in St. Louis and think it's 2001: A Space Odyssey one of these days. But this would have been the place, the Midway, where all of the fun stuff was. This is where they had things like the Street in Cairo exhibition. They had the belly dancers. And also, we talked about the other day about silent film. We talked about the Zoopraxographical Hall that Edward Muybridge ran, which was, he was actually projecting moving images on the wall. But they didn't advertise it as a moving picture show. They advertised it as Edward Muybridge's lectures on animal locomotion. The belly dancers literally outsold him 1,000 to 1. So there is a little bit of silent film talk here. Sorry about the title confusion. I forgot to update the title, so it still has Sunday's title. This is actually Hyde Park Tales, not silent film, but I worked a little bit in there. And down on the end of Midway Plaisance Park, you get into Washington Park. anchored by Lorado Taft's Fountain of Time. Absolutely fantastic statue. This features a guy Father Time looking at the progression of life and death back behind him. There are dozens of figures carved into it. Most notably on the back is, right in the center there, Lorado Taft himself was carved into this one. Now, Lorado Taft, the sculptor here, was the same guy who did Eternal Silence at Graceland Cemetery. We talk about that quite a bit. And this was commissioned by a guy by the name of Henry Graves, who put aside like $250,000 in his will for the family monument. That's about $225,000 more than this thing would have cost. Now, my kind of suspicion is we've got this very similar figure here. That's the front of the Father Time. I kind of wonder if some of the money that was supposed to go to the family monument ended up going to this. Because just as an added little twist in the tale, in Henry Graves' will, he also put aside money for a statue of George Washington in Washington Park. But then they built their own, so he just transferred that money to the monument fund. And there was also some about $30,000 put aside for a statue of Ike Cook, his favorite racehorse. And the racehorse statue never got built, but it was supposed to go right exactly here where the Fountain of Time is now. They got as far as making a model of it. The Tribune published a picture of the model, but it never got built. So my suspicion has always been that some of the money for Eternal Silence ended up going for the Fountain of Time. You sneaky devil, Laredo. We'll move on a bit more here. Not much to see here other than there's a Starbucks there now, because of course there is. But this, up here on 55th Street, was the site of a storefront theater called the Compass, which in 1955 started charging people to come in and watch them improvise plays. Now, people have been doing theater games and things of that nature for a very long time at that point, but this is generally thought to be the birth of professional improv comedy. It was not something that people had ever charged money for people to watch before, at least not on a regular basis. This is a picture of opening night. You can almost picture the entire routine that they're doing here. But there were a number of famous people here. Mike Nichols from the comedy duo Nichols and May. And in fact, that's Elaine May, his partner, in the middle of this sketch. And on the right here, standing up with the kerchief on, this was some kind of show about Soviet Russia. That is Barbara Harris, who went on to be a huge Broadway star in her own right, and Nichols and May as well. Ed Asner was part of the Compass Theater for a while, though I'm not sure he was actually at this location. But quite a number of these people did go on to become fairly famous. Now, this was just a storefront theater. They would just kind of bull people in off of the street and say, hey, you want to come see a show? Buy a drink? They didn't really last long at this location. It was an old bar that they had set up a stage at the front of. Eventually they moved to the north side. They bopped all over the place. Del Close was with them, went on to form the Second City, and eventually the whole place got torn down, and now, of course, there's a Starbucks there. But we'll move up a little bit. I realized I can't really do a Hyde Park tour without talking about this. This is really in Kenwood. But down here on Ellis Street is the Harvard School for Boys. Sometimes this kind of creates confusion. Stories about this, people tend to think we're talking about Harvard, the college. But no, this is Harvard School for Boys, which back in the 1890s had been the school of George and Sanger Pullman. That's old man Pullman sitting right there with his two no-good kids at his feet. They got kicked out of this school, and pretty much every other school they went into, nobody could really stand these kids. And when they both died young, there were a lot of newspaper articles saying, well, let this be a lesson about the worthless lives of rich men's sons. But they were not the most notoriously bad people ever to go to this school. That would be Richard Loeb and Nathan Leopold. These were a couple of kids who committed what was later called the crime of the century. Well, in their time, it was called the crime of the century. They graduated from this school. They were both out of college by the time they were 20 years old and starting to go to graduate school. And somewhere along the line, they decided they would kill a kid named Bobby Franks, who lived in a house that has currently been under repair for a long time just down the block. Now, he wasn't their first choice. They had decided for some reason to kill somebody. Some people say it was because they thought they were Nietzschean supermen. Some say the whole thing was Loeb's idea, but Leopold was in love with him, so he went along with it. Some people think they believed that the normal laws didn't apply to them, or they thought the greatest intellectual thrill would be committing a perfect crime. Different treatments of the case have used all of those at different times. They all kind of explain it, but none of them exactly work, and that's really kind of why this case still resonates with us, I think, because there's not really a good explanation for why they decided to kill this kid. They had planned on somebody else, but they couldn't find that kid, but they happened to see that their Loeb's cousin, Bobby Franks, was walking home from school here. So they picked him up in the car and started driving down Ellis. This is the path they would have taken. And he said he was fine just walking, but Loeb said, "No, I want to ask you something about a tennis racket. Get in here." So we got in the car, started driving along with him. If they had proceeded down this route, they would have ended up at his house in just about half a block. But instead, they took this turn, and at this point, either Leopold or Loeb killed him with a chisel. And exactly which one, that's one thing that's still in dispute, is which one actually did the deed. They both blamed the other. It was probably Loeb. But also, interestingly enough, at the time when they actually struck the fatal blow, they were probably just about to pass this point right here, which has been blocked off for some time, because down the block is the Obama's house. Still blocked off, presidential traffic only. I can just imagine people on TV, why didn't Barack Obama stop this crime right in his neighborhood? That happened 40 years before he was born, or thereabouts. While we're talking about crime, over on the Patreon, this week's topic has been another one that has a Hyde Park connection, which is down here on Drexel at 62nd Street. This gray stone in the middle here was the hideout of a woman who came to be known as the Blonde Tigress. There's a woman named Eleanor Jarman, 28 years old, single mother of two. Her husband had deserted her a few years back. She had started to date a guy who was into robbing places. Her story was that he and his friend would go into a store and come out with a bunch of stuff, and she got a lot of it, so she wasn't asking questions at first. But eventually she started figuring out what was going on here. And instead of getting out, she decided to get involved herself. One grim day in 1933, they were on the far west side robbing a tailor's shop. Witnesses said that they saw Eleanor beating the guy up until her boyfriend shot her to death. The two of them then disappeared for a couple of days. They were captured here on South Drexel at their hideout, where she had dyed her hair red to try to avoid capture, but it only kept her out of the way for a couple of days. Within a month of committing the crime, they had been tried and convicted. Her boyfriend was given the chair, and Eleanor, the Blonde Tigress, was given a 199-year prison sentence. She was sent to the women's prison out in Wright, but in 1940, she got word that one of her sons was thinking of running away from home. He was living with relatives in Sioux City, Iowa. So she broke out of prison, went to Sioux City, found out that the kid was actually just fine, and decided to just stay escaped. She wasn't heard from again, at least officially, ever. She has now been officially a fugitive for over 80 years. Now, in the 1990s, though, her grandson had tried to get clemency for her so she would come out of hiding. He had never gotten to meet her, but he said that his parents had communicated with her off and on through coded messages and classified ads. His dad had even dug out a tunnel under the house, connecting the house to the garage, in case she ever escaped and needed a place to hide. At the time, he started making a lot of noise and started receiving letters from people who knew her and were able to pass on some information. It turned out that she had spent that entire 50 years or so working waitressing jobs around Des Moines and Kansas City, working a lot of cash-only jobs. And there's a terrific a terrific article from towards the end of the search. Iowan searches for the Blonde Tigress. And next to that is an ad at Billy Joe's Picture Show featuring The Fugitive. Also, the Donald Pliner Trunk Show at Dickinson's. Mom, Dad, we were in Des Moines at the time. Why didn't you take me to the Donald Pliner Trunk Show at Dickinson's? I'm sure I would have just loved that. But nobody ever did find the Blonde Tigress. She would be 120 now, so it's to be assumed that she must have passed on at some point. But I keep remembering now, if she was, the letter from her indicated that she was now in a nursing home someplace outside of Des Moines as of 1994. 1994, my great-grandmother was in a nursing home outside of Des Moines. I keep remembering going there and thinking of these old ladies yelling at each other while they watched Lawrence Welk on Channel 11 in the lunchroom. Was one of these women the blonde tigress? The world may never know. All right, everybody, that is Hyde Park Tales. Coming up on Sunday morning, we'll be doing one called Dark History on Madison Street. That's one of those, there's one long stretch of Madison where I've just found one story after another. Then Thursday, a week from tonight, it's going to be St. Patrick's Day, and you know what that means. It is time for another time travel pub crawl right here on Mysterious Chicago. Since it's virtual, we can go to any bar from any time and space. This will mostly be a reprise of last year's virtual time travel pub crawl from St. Patrick's Day, but I'm going to see if I can find the time to work in some new stuff as well. Now, in the meantime, should you need any Mysterious Chicago sweatshirts, hoodie, etc., so you can at least try to be as cool as Luca. You won't succeed, but you can try. That's all at cafepress.com/mysteriouschicago. Check it out. And with that, everybody, I will just put the Benny Goodman back on, and we will hang out like we always do. So thanks a lot for joining me. I'm Adam Seltzer for Mysterious Chicago Tours, and here, ladies and gentlemen, is Benny Goodman. Thanks for joining me. Let me see if there was anybody on Twitter for all that. I can't tell. Hi, if you're on Twitter. We'll find out, I guess. Thanks, Deanna. Thank you, Octavio. Thanks, Nancy. And Cindy, Don, Laura, Carol. Thanks, everybody. We're trying this out on Twitter tonight, see if that works. Thanks, Christine. Also, if anybody found me on TikTok in the last week since I started on there, welcome. There is also a group called Mysterious Chicago Regulars and the Miles Fan Club. You might have met Miles before the tour, the cat. Eric, yeah, I think I got somebody for Find a Grave. Carla, no, I am drinking the Jepson's Bourbon Single Barrel C2, which was aged in a cognac barrel, and is 118 proof. So I've had to go very slowly on this one. The TikTok's doing pretty well. I'm not sure if it's translating to actual new viewers over here or anything yet. We'll see. The one about the 7th grade section of the cemetery has got like 250,000 views. We're in the, for those of you just joining us, we're in the post-show hangout now. Had a fun comment on the video about Jeremiah Price, the guy who tried to cure his cholera with peppermint lozenges, did his own research. Somebody says, I'm really working for Big Pharma and the PC crowd. That's the Phil Collins crowd, for those of you playing along. Now, Rodney, I'm already at home, no need to drive. TikTok is at Adam Chicago, same as the Patreon and the Venmo. Thanks, Georgia. Oh yeah, I'm sold out to Big Pants. They got more money than the PC crowd. Of course, Big Pharma pays me a lot of money to go digging through cemetery interment books looking for people who died of doing their own research. Like it's hard. Patsy Cline crowd, that could be too. Let's see, that one was just starting to get comments when I started here. Just started to have its numbers go. Oh yeah, it went from 6,000 to 9,000 views while I was working here.
And here's Helen Ward to tell you all about her.
Studio Science, yes. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. I don't read all of the comments. Especially if I ever post the clip of me as a boat tour guide going past Trump Tower. That could get me some fun comments. I don't mention it by name, but I do talk about Mr. Wrigley and his praise from the Chicago Tribune for not putting his name on the building in giant letters, like some hoodlum who was compensating for having a very small heart. Hey, Caesar and Caroline in Poland. One thing I'll say for Jeremiah Price, who took peppermint lozenges to cure his cholera, if he had gone to the doctor, they probably wouldn't have given anything better, and he probably did end up smelling moderately better than all the other cholera corpses. Is it snowing right now? Keaton loves Irish dancing. I can do a little of it. Did I moon the tower? Well, not on the tours, but yeah, there was a great rally. Chicago moons the Trump Tower. Was I there? A lot of people were there. One of the most productive protests we ever had. So now I know also next time I do this tour, I gotta add a couple more tights onto it. That ran a little bit shorter than I wanted. Kristen, that's fair. Well, one day, for those of you not getting on TikTok, one of these days I'll just do a morning mini tour where I just show those. I won't have to leave for that. I almost did that today. Good thing I didn't. Today's morning mini tour turned out awesome. That was a stroke of luck. Here's Miles, everybody. Those of you new here, there's a group called Mysterious Chicago Regulars and Miles Fan Club on Facebook. They are starting to gear up for Mystericon, the Mysterious Chicago convention that'll be coming in this fall. Oh yeah, tomorrow night is Whiskey and a Cookie on the Patty Vasquez Show Facebook page. That's where we drink whiskey, eat cookies, and discuss the events of the week. Or just movies, you know. Now, Craig, I didn't get to everything this time. That's kind of my thing. I don't always do the obvious stuff. Well, Cindy, nobody watches my stuff on YouTube. And heck, in a week or so on TikTok, I've got nearly twice as many followers as I've accrued on Twitter in 15 years. Well, I'm sure we'll discuss the Kenobi trailer. I just found out there's a huge backlash over how the Inquisitor looks. Come on, guys. Do we have to have a fan-out backlash about everything and expect Disney to respond to it? Come on. Also, I got to admit, I'm not sure how to get into the Japanese garden right now. The way I used to get into it was blocked off a while ago. I keep getting lost trying to find it again.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and we stay right in the urban room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago.
Yeah, Adam, Star Wars fandom is maybe the second worst online crowd I've ever been in. Young adult literature is the worst, by far. Star Wars ain't great. Well, Karen, there's hardly anything we can bring up that you won't say that you hate on here. So I'm very flattered that you seem to like my shows. Okay, Carol, that's good. When I really just got to see if I'm driving everybody crazy on there or something, you know. We'll try it again on Sunday morning. Aaron, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that. Carol, I'm going to Atlanta in a couple weeks. Trading high and low, hear it everywhere you go, any time of day. Thanks, Renee. Megan, yes, I have. I forgot to add that to my list of things that I've done tours on. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I'll go in and put it into my list. I've been trying to make a list of all of the stuff that I've researched the last couple of years and done tours on. But we could go there again this year. That was a really cool place. I am presently at about 330 topics.
And we'll let the title speak for itself. Any Goodman?
Oh, Mike, that's cool. We love Helen Ward facts around here. Yeah, 4 big tubs of Star Wars stuff sounds about right. I saw the Ewok Village is still extant. That's one of the best toys of all time. Oh, hey, Miles. Come to say hi to everybody. You're being extra cuddly tonight. Because, you know, I went to feed Sammy. Yeah, my neighbor is supervising a shipment of body armor to Romania to go to Ukraine. And I'm doing my part by feeding his cat. My truth is marching on. Thanks, Joanne. And thanks to whoever said that. Jordana, there was an Ewok Village Toy in 1983 as one of the best toys of all time. It took me until the 90s to get it. I finally found it at a garage sale. You cannot believe how excited I was when I found that at a garage sale. Back when you could still get 80s Star Wars stuff at garage sales. Yeah, Miles, you could. That's true. Daryl haunting the back of the MSI. I think I know who made that one up. There is the Clarence Darrow Memorial Bridge back behind there. But I just don't buy the stories of the ghost. Yeah, they can sell them on eBay now, but not for as little. You know, you wouldn't get an Ewok Village for $3 on eBay, even adjusted for inflation. Any more than I would find a Gertrude Abercrombie painting at a garage sale, though that's still possible. She's only so recently become famous again that there could definitely still be people whose parents bought one of her paintings at a street fair, and now it's just in the closet someplace.
And here's a short encore portion of Benny Goodman's forthright invitation at the beginning of his book.
Yeah, Richard loved that story. I do know exactly who made up the story about H.H. Holmes haunting the MSI. I'm not naming names, but I know who it was. Aww. Oh, the teddy bear you see next to the orange light is from the World's Fair of St. Louis. That bear might have been on that Ferris wheel. Kathleen, you'd have to ask about deals for the hotel at Mystericon in the group.
From the Joseph Urban Room of the Congress Hotel on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, this is the National Broadcasting Company.
Now that Benny's finished up, I'll just let Miles purr a bit. Miles? You're telling me it's time to go? Kind of seems like you're telling me it's time to go. All right. Well, I'm not the kind that would argue with Miles. So, all right, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and give a quick another plug for the upcoming events. On Sunday morning, we'll be doing Dark History on Madison Street. That one hasn't come up in a long time. And Thursday night, virtual time travel pub crawl, St. Patrick's Day. Also, check out AdamChicago.com. That leads to MysteriousChicago.com, which has been revamped a little bit. Adam Chicago is also the name of the Venmo, the name of the Patreon, and now the name on the TikTok. I'm trying to get the Twitter feed. The guy who has Adam Chicago on Twitter got it like 15 years ago and never used it once. He's hard to get a hold of. But all right, everybody, thanks a lot for joining me. I'm Adam Seltzer for Mysterious Chicago Tours. I will see you in the morning for Find a Grave Friday. And until then, everybody, stay safe, stay strong, and of course, if you can, you gotta stay spooky, everybody. Have a great night.